Hey, College Football 25's Dynasty Deep Dive blog. I just finished reading all 85 pages of it, and here are the things that I think are the most important. Underlying our 3 core pillars was one singular motto: satisfy the core community because this is their game. Amen. Moving conferences does not mean you are stuck with old conference jersey patch for the logo on the 25-yard lines. Those will be dynamically updated. Look, James Madison in the ACC. This is huge. This is one small thing that everyone has always wanted. Normally, you don't find out about things like this until launch. This is a small detail that is so huge, and this is massive. Team Builder in Online Dynasty. Team Builder is back. You can import up to 16 Team Builder teams in a private online dynasty. The commissioner will need to replace existing FBS schools with the Team Builder teams they want to add when setting up the dynasty. Including Team Builder schools is only available at the creation of the league, and they can only be used in a private online dynasty. So make sure your commissioner knows which school you want to use before getting started. Team Builder Online Dynasties. That is, that's a dream. God. Look, one of the FCS schools has a panda, and it's red, black, and white. I wonder if that's a shout out to Not the Expert. That's crazy. Also found out he did an interview the other day. We went to the same college. I actually met him in person, but I did not know he grew up in the same town that I did, which is insane. During development, members of our team were able to participate in a mock selection committee session hosted by the College Football Playoff to help us better understand the process of how the committee determines rankings. They did a mock selection with the actual CFP committee to figure out their algorithm for it. With the expansion of the new 12-team format, we were able to apply those learnings to project how the committee will value wins and losses in a world where we're going undefeated in a power conference is going to be less and less common. We created a unique college football playoff poll model to determine how we anticipate the rankings to look in the new format. Generating a believable opinion-based poll is no easy feat, easily one where we are projecting what may happen versus what being able to use the real-world results as a reference point. You are what your record says you are is a misnomer in college football. Thank you. So factors like school and conference prestige can impact where a school finds itself in the poll. The CFP National Championship game has its own rotation of hosts, starting with Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. Will rotate through an additional 10 locations, wow, before looping back around in your dynasty. That's crazy. So if there's only 30 years in dynasty, let's just say you went to the national championship every year. If there's 10 locations, you're only playing in Mercedes-Benz 3 times. So that's awesome. You can reduce any conference to as few as 4 members and grow any conference to as large as 20 schools. Sweet. In addition to moving schools into different conferences, you can have a school go independent for the ultimate in-schedule flexibility. Like I said earlier, if you do that, you can't get a first-round bye in the playoff. You will also have the ability to edit each conference's rules, determining if they will or will not have divisions, what those division names are, like we've seen in the past. But in this game, it's nice that they did put this in because everyone's like, oh, well, that's been in past games. It's like, yeah, but divisions are not really a thing anymore, like we said, except for the Sun Belt. So we can go back. You can go back to a historical conference if you want by having that in there, which is great for your own immersion. You can choose the conference championship game site, which is great, which has been there, but it's also great to have that back. Yes, the rivalry logos are back, baby. Yes. For non-conference games, we've included as many real-world games as they were announced by the time we had to lock in schedules. So when you get to 2027 and 2028, the Florida State-Georgia home-and-home series will already be scheduled. So the thing here is, you don't have to keep that game. That's what a lot of people thought when this was first rumored. They're like, oh, so I have to play that game. No, you don't. But if you're like me and you like the real-world schedules, the future non-conference games are already scheduled. So like when Auburn goes to Baylor, that's already going to be in the game for me, which is awesome. Certain schools like Ohio State and Florida State, the pride stickers that are applied to an individual player's helmet over the course of the season are as iconic as any other tradition. So each season the helmet starts fresh, and over the course of the season, based on each player's performance, pride stickers are added to give a visual representation of that player's accomplishments. So as we see here, they go up. That's kind of like NCAA 06. We worked with each school to understand their fill pattern to make sure the stickers are being applied over the course of the season, and they are being applied in the correct pattern based on how the school actually applies them. Incredible. To avoid the mass confusion of multiple people trying to edit schedules at the same time, the commissioner in an online dynasty is responsible for making all custom schedule changes. Both online and offline dynasty can go up for 30 seasons. 32 users can participate in dynasty offline or online. Only 1 user per school. The commissioner is in charge of determining the settings for the dynasty. The roster file that's used at league creation handles all custom conference, handles all custom schedule changes, and is responsible for advancing the dynasty to the next week offseason stage. No pressure. You can keep track of everyone's status in the menu screen. Commissioner status can be transferred from the member screen as well. So for Online Dynasty, if you're like, oh, I can't do this, this guy's too busy this week, we need Joe to be the commissioner this week, you can send it over to Joe for that week. Commissioners will have the ability to force a win in the event that a game was not able to be completed. So like if your buddy's playing FCS West, you can just force the win because you know he was going to beat them. And for those of you that like to restart a game versus the CPU that isn't going your way, the number of times a game was started is tracked on the score schedule screen for all to see. Oh man, you can get roasted for that. That's hilarious. All coaches have a coach prestige letter grade that ranges from A+ to F. Coach prestige is reflective of your ability to meet your expectations, adjusted for the school and the role that you have. For example, meeting expectations and winning 5 games at a small school will have a significantly smaller impact than winning the SEC championship at a traditional powerhouse. See here, which we all loved in 14, the little layout interface where you can go back and see teams' records from previous years, how you can help them, what's their best season in the last decade, can you do better than that? I always love looking at those screens. Because you didn't receive any offers in the first week of bowl season, or if you didn't like the ones you received, doesn't mean this experience is over. Remember, the coach carousel takes place over multiple weeks. First week of bowl season is just the beginning. As schools hire and poach coaches from other schools, those jobs start to become available. You know, it's a domino effect. One coach gets hired and all these other jobs open up. Viewing a job offer, you will see the school's new coach preferences, what happened to their previous coach, who the top candidates are for the job. You also see I like that they put that back in. You also see the contract they are offering you and what the contract expectations are. Once you accept an offer, you will stay with your current school until after the national championship game, which is when all job changes are processed. This allows you to take one last ride with your current team. So if you're in a bowl game and you decide to leave at the end of conference championship weeks, you still get to coach that team in the bowl game. That's cool. If you accept a head coach position, you will be able to manage your staff and hire coordinators at your new school during the rest of the carousel period. Wow. And also view all of the coach movements across the college football world in the staff move screen. And then here we have the staff move screen that they were talking about. So this is cool. You can see fired from Cincy, hired at Toledo. And look at this. DC went to the NFL. So coaches can go to the NFL. Managing your staff starts during conference championship week. During this week, you will be able to fire your coordinators. Like I said, be careful because this is the only week you can do this. After this, you are unable to replace a coordinator unless they are hired away by another school. Every coordinator has a standard 2-year contract. Once their contract expires, it will be automatically renewed for another 2 years. Of course, if you don't like them, you can always tell them they're fired. If your coordinator has 1 year or less remaining on their contract, there's a chance they can be poached and leave for another school. If this happens during the carousel, you will have the opportunity to hire the replacement. Differentiate regions of the country by player caliber, quality, and type to authentically capture high school talent based on historical real-world data. So they basically, like they showed us in the trailer, there are hotbeds in recruiting. So like Atlanta is Atlanta. It's good. South Florida is South Florida. They are making sure those actual real-life hotbeds are hotbeds in the game. Present different resources available to schools, ensuring the top schools can blanket the country while smaller schools need to be more targeted with their approach. So what we've learned is it's not going to be easy in this game. From all these things we've learned for a small school to get good quickly. Like there's no 1 or 2 year turnarounds. Recruiting for Stanford, academic prestige is obviously an A+. But over here you got top schools that compete within academic prestige. You have Rice, Stanford, Northwestern, Cal, UCLA, Duke. So that's cool. Not only do you see what you're good at, inside of that little thing, you get to see what other schools are also good at that you could possibly be competing with. When we go to championship contender, as we see here, Stanford is 75th. So that's awesome. When you're looking at your recruiting and everything, it'll tell you who is at risk of transferring. They're like, okay, I know who he is. I can work on him now. Rather than like when you play NCAA 06 and you're like, oh shit, that kid's trying to transfer and you have to try to get as many points as possible after you tried to keep all your recruits that went to the pro draft. Now you're going to know beforehand. Each week, the game will surface this information to you in a weekly summary, allowing you to quickly see the health of your program and any changes. The My School Report will show you grades that were positive or negatively impacted by your actions in the last week, as well as any grades that players who are at risk of transferring if it gets too low. Like I said, so you really have to deliver on your promises in this game. So like if you promise them that you're a championship contender and in the past games you could just lie and get them to go there, now they're going to be like, look, you're not a championship contender. Look at this. They're like, I'm getting out of here. We ain't winning shit. Some years have a plethora of great quarterback talent. Others have fewer great prospects. Similarly, the quantity and quality of prospects from each region of the country will vary. Certain regions will be more consistent in the caliber, quality, and type of recruits they produce. So like I said, hotbeds. They have Southern California here as an example for quarterback talent. East Texas for wide receivers. So that's awesome. We are actually getting true hotbeds in recruiting and fluctuation. Of reshaping pipelines to represent a geographic region rather than a state. For example, Florida is now broken into 3 different pipelines: North Florida, Central Florida, South Florida. Similarly, Metro Atlanta is its own pipeline, whereas New York and New Jersey were combined to become a single pipeline. That's awesome. That's incredible. With our newly shaped pipelines, the next step was to look at every school's recruiting class each of the last 10 years to identify which parts of the country they primarily recruit in. So they literally went into the school's recruiting for the game, like in real life, to find the hotbeds of those current schools to have them kind of preset into the game. That's amazing. Like I've said, pipelines and deal breakers create a much more realistic and less exploitable recruiting experience. While it's still possible to land 4 stars as a small school, it will require the exact right fit and a heavy investment of your resources and time. So it's going to be tough to recruit other players. You're going to have small recruiting classes if you're going for that. You will no longer have to make custom house rules in your online dynasty to prevent your friend from cheesing the system. Search for recruits using the following criteria for advanced search. So like we saw in 14, there's advanced search. Look at this. You can even go handedness for your quarterback. If you want a lefty, you can specifically search for a lefty. Okay, this is important. Recruiting hours are your core currency to spend on recruiting actions and scouting each week. The amount of recruiting hours you have depends on your team's prestige. Okay, and what part of the season you're in. Teams with a higher team prestige will have more recruiting hours each week. This is meant to model the recruiting resources a big program has, with higher tier programs having way more resources available to them. For example, in the preseason, a 5-star program will have 1,000 recruiting hours compared to only 350 hours for a 1-star program. The probability of a player transferring after their deal breaker has been violated is driven by their overall, with the higher overall players being more likely to transfer. So if you have like an 88 overall running back, he's second on your depth chart, and he's like, look, you promised me more playing time, the other dude's only like a little bit better than me, whatever, or you're starting someone else with higher speed. He's like, you promised me playing time. I gotta leave, dude. I gotta do something. High overall players may look to go pro and enter the draft if they've been a school up for more than 3 years. Obviously, players who are entering the pro draft will display which round they are drafted in, which is always fun to look at. Keep in mind that you only have a limited number of persuasion attempts. Of course, kind of like you had points for persuasion back in the day that you also had to split between recruiting. The higher your coach prestige, the more attempts you will have. You can increase the number of persuasion attempts in the gift of gab ability, and you can increase your chance of successfully persuading a player to stay with the roster retainer ability. Both of those abilities are available in the program builder archetype. Every transfer is given a star rating based on their overall and has a national, state, and position ranking just like high school prospects. So like you see on recruiting sites, that's awesome. Every player in the transfer portal has the same deal breaker that caused them to transfer originally. Their new ideal pitch will include their deal breaker motivation, and it will be relevant to their transfer's needs. So like I said, if the kid wants to go for playing time, he's going to go somewhere he wants to play. If he wants to go to a contender and ride a coattail to a championship, he can go do that. Skill group is basically like, how fast can this kid actually get? How strong can he actually get? So that's what we see here with, we got Quinshawn Judkins right here. You can see he can't go all the way up to 99 for power. For route running, he's obviously a running back, so he can't be 99 in route running. Hands, he can. Elusiveness, he can. IQ, he can. Mental and physical abilities, we've already talked about these in gameplay deep dives. I'm not going into them. They're not X factors. That's just all I have to say. An impact player doesn't mean that they are boosted or anything. It's just showing you, basically the impact player thing is showing you this player is good and he is a high overall. That's all it's saying, is this guy is better than you, but it's not like an ability to boost them. Managing wear and tear, we've already talked about this. You can turn it on and off, not in this video, but in the past when they brought it up. You can turn wear and tear on and off if you don't want it, but you're going to have to take care of your players when to rest them. If you're up by a certain amount, are you going to take them out, or are you going to keep them in and run up the score but risk injury? The crowd themes that our friends in presentation talked about recently also appear in Dynasty. If your school does a whiteout, blackout, checkerboard striping, you will see those crowd themes in the first home game of the season for rivalry games if you are named as game of the week. Ooh, so let's think maybe the Penn State whiteout is programmed to be, if Penn State gets the game of the week, it will automatically make sure your whiteout is the game of the week instead of maybe the highest ranked opponent initially at the beginning, so it could change over time.